I spent 3 weeks making a moss-themed witch that was supposed to take 1 week, but I got carried away as per always. Hello, I'm Miss Twisted. You can call me Charlotte. I do cosplay, crafting, and other weird and whimsical stuff. And for this project, we are definitely leaning into the whimsical. Last year, I made a moth witch, which was very dry and dusty and ghostly, had connotations of death. I had this idea in my head ever since of like a counterpart to that represented like something teeming with life, like a dense rainforest, unsettlingly alive, dewy and moist. I'm so sorry, I promise I won't use the word moist again. So I've got my mood board for an idea of the general vibes I'm going for, but aside from that, I don't know for sure how this is going to look. I know I want, of course, the hat, a staff, some kind of familiar, and like some big flowy skirts and some extra little bits and accessories on top. And we're just gonna see how it goes. Anyway, I think you get the idea, and I went super overboard for this project, so let's just jump straight into it. All of my favorite projects start with a big box of goodies. Most of the stuff in here is either from my fabric stash or like op shops, couple of things I bought special. We've got a ton of funky fabrics in various shades of green. Some of these I don't love the color of, but I have a solution for that. It's fabric dye, of course. Comically oversized straw hat. Hopefully this will be a witch's hat by the time I'm finished. This shawl was from an op shop. It was like $2. I just want to see if it'll take to some dye. You can't have a moss witch without moss. I have way too much of this. I seem to have a consistent problem with not reading the quantities before I buy things. That's how I ended up with so much fragile tape. Bunch of fake plant bits. I particularly like these succulents. I'm imagining these on the hat. Leather and wool scraps, some funky twine, some funky trim, and a bunch of wooden beads from an op shop. Now Halloween might have been and gone, but we are still celebrating the witchy themes here, so why not celebrate a ghost too? I'm of course talking about today's sponsor, CyberGhost. Yes, nailed that perfect segue. Let's be real, the internet is full of shady sites and trackers, so online safety is more important than ever. That's why you need a solid VPN, so huge thanks to CyberGhost for sponsoring this video. CyberGhost routes your traffic through a secure encrypted tunnel, keeping your IP hidden and your data private. Just turn on CyberGhost VPN before you browse, it encrypts and reroutes 100% of your traffic through their secure servers, so no one will even know about your online activity. What's more, CyberGhost VPN doesn't keep logs, so not even they themselves will know what you do online. With just a few clicks, you can change your virtual location and unlock geo-blocked content from tons of streaming services, including Netflix, Amazon Prime, and more. Or even snag better online deals or play games blocked in your region. CyberGhost works on all major platforms: Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, and even smart TVs and consoles. One subscription covers up to 7 devices, perfect for sharing with family or friends. Right now, they are offering $2.03 a month plus for 3 months. That's 84% off, along with a 45-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 support. Join over 38 million users and grab your discount via the link in the description. Stay safe out there. For now, let's get stuck into the crafting. And so, now that we're feeling a little more safe this spooky season, it's time to dye. Actually, I lied. Before we do that, we've got to figure out which of these fabrics is like a natural fiber versus a synthetic like a polyester, because they're going to take to dyes differently, so I'm going to use a different dye for different kinds of fibers. And I don't know if this is the most efficient way to do this, but it is definitely the most fun. We're going to light some stuff on fire. There we go. I should do my due diligence here and say, don't try this at home, folks. Just don't. Like, this is open flame. I don't want anyone catching stuff alight because of me. I'm essentially doing it in a very safe environment, knowing the risks, in a ventilated space. And remember, of course, if you're burning polyesters, you're burning plastic. That stuff is toxic. Round 1, a thread from that shawl, which is burning away with a black smoke. There's some black ash that crumbles away as I touch it. These are all signs that it's probably a cotton. Alright, apparently this one's cotton. I wasn't expecting that considering I paid like $2 for it, so that's going in my naturals pile. A few more for Team Naturals. Now this one's most likely to be a synthetic, as it's sort of melting rather than burning into this hard ball on the end. So out of my fabrics destined for the dye pot, only one was synthetic. That is a pretty damn good track record. I definitely prefer using natural. It's much more breathable, better environmentally, all that jazz. I'm scrunching up into bundles each of these fabrics that's gonna get dyed and holding them together with elastic and hair ties. Now, I don't know if this is gonna work, but hear me out here. In the past, I've dyed clothing and been like really lazy with it and not like given enough room for the pot to move around with the dye. And so some of the pieces I've made have come out like really uneven and kind of dappled, but they also looked kind of cool. So theoretically, if I leave it scrunched up like this, it won't be able to dye everything evenly. So maybe I'll end up with some of that uneven mottled texture even more. Okay, now it is time to dye. So we have all the natural fibers over here with some all-purpose dye and some hot but not boiling water in a pan that is designated for dyeing and not food. Usually the dye goes in here and you mix it around to make sure it's even. This time I'm actually gonna try a little tie-dye thing and pour it over this first. I don't know if this is gonna work, but you know, what do I got? Oh no. And that's just gonna go straight in now, because I need to clean up the mess I just made, because I don't want to lose a rental deposit. Let's take this to the laundry before I destroy any more floors. After 20 minutes or so soaking, I took this outside to hang out as I can't tell while it's wet whether or not these actually worked. Alright, good morning folks. Everything's dried overnight, so let's have a look. This is the biggest piece of fabric I've got. I think it's like a viscose. You can see there's like a little bit of modeling going on. It's pretty subtle overall. There wasn't a heap of change to most of these bits, but that $2 shawl that I got from an op shop that was like cream colored has picked up that green so well. Like this has just soaked it up. What a beautiful color. Like I'm so chuffed with that one. The most dramatic effect is definitely on the cotton jersey. Like that's come out almost like a proper tie-dye sort of thing. I'm thinking about making the most of this with some arm warmers. And I gotta say, there's something so satisfying about purposefully breaking the rules of dyeing clothes to get those effects. So I think some of you guys who commented on my last video about pathological demand avoidance, you guys might be onto something there. In a brief moment of hubris, I did try and like squeeze the entire straw hat into the dye pot to see if I could get like the base green. It didn't entirely work and now it just kind of looks like a moldy hat. But I mean, I guess it's green, so, and most of this is gonna get covered in fabric, which I guess leads us to the next step, hey. All right, welcome to my floor. I don't remember if this is how I did it last time, but I think I'm just gonna like cut out a donut shape around that hat and then literally just glue it to the top of the hat and hope for the best. The good thing is, if it's wrinkled, you can just call it texture, and if it's really bad, you can just stick some fake leaves on top of it, right? And then it's just part of the foliage. You know, I didn't even need to be on the floor for this part. Like, I could have easily fit this on the table. Okay, so, theoretically, like that. And since the only requirements for this costume are that I like the end result, we can go full feral crafting, like with reckless abandon for this one. The fabric is getting glued to the top of the brim here, and once that is fully dry, I'm going to reinforce this one with some stitches spiraling out from the hat. I'm putting some glue on the inside of the brim here to fold over the excess fabric, cut off all the extra, and once that is fully dry, we can chuck a bit of trim and twine on that just to cover those rough edges. I also decided I didn't like the beige colored raw straw under here, so I'm painting the whole thing brown. Alright, off to a pretty damn good start. I'm not 100% sold on like the brown straw underneath, but for now, we really got to get to the point of the witch's hat. Get it? Because it's gonna have a point. Yeah, I'm not even sorry for that one. My mock-up for this is 2 pieces of this wiggly triangle I'm sewing along the edges of so I can turn it inside out and make a cone shape. Okay, I think it's a little tall, but the general vibes and shape are kind of there. I love the whimsical little curve that's going on. I am discovering the hard way that I have a really large head because this is just kind of like floating on top right now. So I'm gonna have to cut into the brim a little bit. You know, if I've had a really large head this whole time, that might explain why I always get wig and hat headaches. I just thought I kind of just sucked at wearing them. Okay, that has definitely helped sit that a little bit neater. Mock up number 2 with a shorter wiggly cone shape, and that is looking much better. So I chucked some stabilizer on my green fabric to make that a little stiffer, and then sewed the real deal. All right, I'm gonna use my mock up and my leftover stabilizer stuff and shove that into here just so that I've got a little bit more stuff holding up that top. We got a pretty damn good solid base here. I have a really cool idea that may or may not work for the first thing to decorate this. And for that, we need to go outside and get a stick. Luckily for me, we just had a ton of windy storms, so the parklands near my house were covered in piles of gum tree sticks. Because I'm after some smaller twigs and a staff. Okay, Stick Nation, we've got our 4 finalists for my staff. I'm kind of leaning towards this one here. It's less like of a fun wiggly shape than the others, but it does mean it's going to be quite sturdy, and I can tie extra sticks and things to it to have some cool bits that come off, you know? Plus, there's a very satisfying fork right at the top that I can hang stuff between. These twigs are what I need right now, and my plan for these is to try and make a sort of like spider web using like really thin fishing line and some little UV resin drops. Unfortunately, I immediately snapped the twigs that were the perfect frame for the spider web, so I had to like glue it back together. And I'm sorry in advance, but the fishing line I'm using for this is so thin, it's kind of hard to catch on camera, so you can't really see a lot of what I'm doing for these sections. Okay, that was really hard. And I don't know if this looks very good right now, but we're going to see how it looks with some resin on here. So let's take this outside. I've seen a few variations on this technique, but basically I'm using UV resin in direct sunlight, which means it starts to harden into those droplets as soon as it comes out of the bottle and onto those wires. You know what, guys? I think that's pretty damn good. Like, it's not a cartoonishly perfect spiderweb shape, but I mean, it's just more organic as it is. So yeah, pretty chuffed with that. As I was hot gluing my spiderweb stick onto the hat, I decided I needed one more piece of spiderweb kind of connecting the top of the hat. I decided against adding any actual spiders to the spiderweb. I think there's just enough people out there that are afraid of spiders that would find it unpleasant. And I really want this character to feel like friendly and approachable to everyone. But in terms of making this feel teeming with life, frogs. We're going with frogs. I'm 3D printing the frogs, so mad props to both of these models. Usually this is the kind of thing I would like to hand sculpt, but I'm a little short on time for this project. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure I could get the shape of a frog all that well. I proceeded to forget to adjust my camera for the next 10 to 15 minutes while I did all the support removal and sanding down. Guys, I'm such a good YouTuber, what a professional. Anywho, it was still really sunny outside, which meant less time waiting between layers of priming and then painting. Okay, those froggies are going to be drying outside for a while between layers of priming and painting. And I know I just said that I wasn't going to hand sculpt those frogs just to like save time, but I do have a very large tub of foam clay, and my last witch had a giant moth familiar, so maybe this witch should have a giant frog familiar, so maybe I should sculpt one more. Honestly, 3D printing is a fantastic tool, but I do really like making things by hand, so I think I just needed an excuse to make one of these. I've got a lumpy base made of foil, which I'm just gonna start smoothing the foam clay over into what I think is vaguely a frog shape. I don't think I'm very good at sculpting, nor do I usually have the patience for it, so a lot of my designs do turn out quite lumpy, and this guy was no exception. Okay, so my guy's looking a little lumpy right now, but the shape's there. I will probably smooth him out in a little bit. Anywho, thinking about eyes, and I do have some like cabochon eyes, basically like these things here. The funny thing is that these ones here are the perfect size, but I don't have like a matching set. I've got like this sort of purple beady slitted eye and like a regular eye, and so like they fit perfectly, they're just mismatched, you know? And like obviously I'll try and fix okay, I'll do a better job than that, I promise. The other option is I have a matching set of these ones, but they're kind of comically large by comparison. This is too fun. Alright, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of leaning back towards the comically oversized eyes. So we've got a little foam clay sausage underneath to form the cheek, and one over the top to form like a brow bone. Do frogs have brow bones? I don't know. I started smoothing out my foam clay with water and then gave up and remembered something I've tried before, which is using like an empty pen canister to poke a bunch of like scaly texture onto this guy. You can't see how lumpy my foam clay is if the whole thing is purposefully lumpy. Genius life hack. It's looking more toad than frog now, but either way, it's going outside to dry for a day. Okay, so now I've got even more frogs drying, and that'll take a while. So I'm going to start on the staff because I've got this stick and I've got some smaller sticks here. I don't know what kind of tree it is, but there's this tree in the backyard that does these really cool, like, slightly curly branches. So I'm just gonna try and like stick a bunch of these to the top of the staff and kind of create like a bit of a, I don't know, like a crown at the very top that sort of forms together. Back to good old reliable hot glue to get these sticks together, and then I'm going to wrap a bunch of twine around each of these joints, which should help reinforce it and hide the hot glue. As we enter the late night crafting frenzy, I pulled out some transparent warbler and just kind of scrunched a bunch of it together once I'd heated it into like a vaguely crystal shape. Since purple's going to be like my accent color, I thought it'd be really cool to have a floating purple crystal in the middle of this staff. I painted this up with some alcohol ink, dusting it down with some mica powder to make it more opaque and metallic, and then finished off the whole thing with a few coats of a spray-on gloss varnish to bring back that gloss and to seal in that mica powder. I managed to stab a sewing needle through the top of that crystal so I could sew in some of that fishing line and awkwardly tie it to the top of the staff. Good morning, folks! I have no idea how much of this I filmed because I was like late night crafting frenzy, locked in, deep in the sauce, all that jazz. Anyway, I now have like a floating crystal in the middle of my staff, and I've just kind of tied that in with some of that fishing line, and it's looking pretty good. I kind of like how it spins around. Still is looking a little empty. Gonna do some stuff about that later, but the first thing I want to do is add some like staining to this staff, because it's not brown enough. I know that's a very first world problem, like my sticks aren't brown enough, but I kind of want these more brown, and I kind of want the green a little bit more green, like everything needs to look a little bit more lush. Turns out leather dye is pretty good at staining wood in a pinch. The spiderweb effect on the hat had really grown on me, so I'm adding in some more of that to the staff here. Especially since we had like the third sunny day in a row. For Melbourne, that is a miracle. And I guess since I had more practice this time round, those dewdrops seem to go a lot neater and more even. And we are finally breaking out the fake plants and moss and lichen to just cover every inch of this staff. Alright folks, I think that stuff is done. I really should have decorated the crystal before I like started to do the rest because that was a pain in the butt. But in general, I think that looks pretty cool. Everything looks very overgrown in general, so yeah, let's do the frogs. I'm gonna start with my giant frog familiar, which I wanted to do purple for some reason. I guess just to distinguish her from the green frogs. She's got a darker purple base coat, and once that's dry, I'm going back over and dry brushing a lighter tone over the top to catch on all those edges of the bumpy skin. Once that's dry, my girl is going outside for some spray coats of gloss varnish. I promised I wouldn't use the M word, but frogs are generally not dry. Meanwhile, the green guys are getting a bit of a yellow underbelly, some beady metallic purple eyes, and a darker green to clean up around the edges and to add a bit of shading here and there. Good morning, folks! Check out my frog buddies. They are all finished, ready to go, and I think that painting turned out really nice. I put a little bit of resin over the eyes to make them extra glassy and creepy, and like my thought is that I might actually be able to fit all three of them on the hat. So kind of thinking like this guy here, maybe kind of sticking out the side like this, and then my little squishy boy over here. Is 3 frogs too many frogs for a hat? That's really the question. And of course, number 4, my beautiful mutant little purple baby, who can have her eye protection come off now. We'll come back to the hat. I actually want to add a little bit of stuff to her because she's looking a little bit too purple. I know that sounds really silly, but I have a plan. It's time for some frog surgery, or maybe frog piercings. I don't know. I want to stick a bunch of fake plants into her back, just thinking of like Bulbasaur or like Quallac from the Ori game. And of course, tons of fake moss wherever I can fit it. Now she's looking a little less naked. I'm going to create something similar as like a platform or something to put her on, just because like the bottom is totally flat, so I kind of just want to hide most of it. Side note, I did cannibalize a few leaves from my set in the background, so if you occasionally see like a missing leaf, that's why. Back to the frogs and the hat. I'm gonna lay down some of this netting first, and then I'm gonna stick the frogs on. I cut the butt off this big one just to fit him on the hat better. Sorry, mate. And then with the frogs on, I'm just gonna start going absolutely bonkers with like succulents, fake plants, fake moss, and just absolutely cover this entire hat. This is definitely a more is more project. There is no subtlety here. And don't worry, I did not forget to decorate under the hood too. If it were any other project, I would count this as too much, but I'm just having a good time at this point. Okay, I have gone completely overboard at this stage. There is so much green and mossiness going on here. Like, the whole thing just gives me this feeling of a cacophony of life just blending together, just bursting out of this hat. And I've got these little butterfly clips. I can just like stick these onto my hat at any point if I need like some more going on. I realized I didn't go over the butterflies earlier, but this is exactly the same way as I made the moths for the moth witch too. I've got these fake butterflies that I'm going to pull that plastic backing off and just use the wings. This bit without the wings, by the way, a bug of my nightmares. Anywho, I'm going to sandwich the wings on either side of the gold wings of the butterfly clip. Because they've got those springs on them, it means that those wings are going to wobble and shake around as if the butterfly is literally fluttering. I really like this little dangly bit over the side here. I might do some more of that later on, but I think that I'm going to pace myself a bit. I'm going to leave this. I'm going to start on some clothes because I haven't even started on an outfit yet. Starting off with an easy part, I am going to cut a tube of this jersey out and literally just sew a straight line down it with one little gap at the end here for my thumb. And hey presto, you have some arm warmers. There are better tutorials out there if you want to know a bit more details about how to make this, but that's the gist of it. First off, I added some of that like green webbing stuff to the gloves. I just wanted a little bit more texture on here. I didn't want to go super crazy. I don't know, I'm really into it. All right, clothing wise, I'm not making a top because I already have this one. It is just like a plain brown cotton top that I got from a thrift store for like $5. I've also got this deep green one, which was also from a thrift store for like $5. What can I say? I'm a bit of a fiend for secondhand. So we're gonna start with a skirt because I have a ton of this stuff, and I'm gonna do a circle skirt because they're easy. It's literally just like a donut of fabric. I'm gonna make my job even easier and not even like cut out a full circle. I'm gonna leave the hem really uneven for vibe space, and not because I'm lazy and don't want to have to cut an even hem. Okay, I've had some feral crafting moments before, but this is perhaps my most feral. I'm not even measuring to find the center of this fabric and cut out a hole which will be my waistline. I cannot stress enough how much this video is not a tutorial. It's just kind of a documentation of the chaos. Anywho, I am slapping some like embroidered ribbon on the top to create like a waistband. That just ties up on the side here, which I've shortened while I'm wearing it. And I'm taking half my set with me apparently. What can I say? I'm already one with nature. With the leftover fabric from this skirt, I'm gonna sort of gather it and like sew it onto either hip here just to create some fullness in that skirt. I hand stitched this in place while I was wearing it, but then did reinforce it in the sewing machine just because I didn't trust this stitching to not break later on. Okay, one of the laziest skirts I've ever made, but there's already so much beautiful volume going on at the hips here, so I'm pretty happy with that. That beautiful green shawl is getting ruined a little bit by putting some of this like netting on the top and just dappling it with some green leather dye. I figured it can just be another layer of texture over my waist. I had a really cool textured leather belt that I was going to wear with this look from Foxes and Ravens. I cannot find this belt anywhere. I don't know what I've done with it. It is in this house somewhere and I'm sure it'll turn up. Anyway, my solution to this was to make a brand new one from scratch. Honestly, I wasn't that mad about it. I've been looking for an excuse to do more leather work anyway. The orange stuff I'm tracing onto some 3mm leather here is the remains of a duct tape pattern from a previous video. Why is it fragile tape? Well, that's also a story for another video. For my wonderful regular watchers, you guys know the drill. Anywho, I'm using some leather scissors here to hack away at cutting this out. Keep in mind here guys, I am a beginner when it comes to leatherworking. I'm still figuring it out, but this tool is one of my favorites. It kind of like scrapes the corners off to create some rounded edges. It's very satisfying, but not as satisfying as using my grommet press, which I'm using to punch some holes in for some corset lacing later on. My tube of leather is getting dunked into some hot but not boiling water. This is going to make the leather soft and malleable and then harden up later. Before this dries off completely, I'm going to run a tool over this one to sort of engrave in this wood grain pattern. And then we're gonna play fast and loose with the dyeing process. I'm just gonna rub some of this leather dye all over this damn thing. I'd like to reiterate, I'm glossing over most of the processes here because I truly have no idea what I'm doing. Anywho, I actually thought this was a little too dark for my liking, so I went back over the wood grain pattern with a tool that actually like scrapes a line out of that leather. Once again, I don't think this is exactly how you're supposed to use this tool, but it brought back that lighter undyed leather underneath, so I kind of liked it. The finished tube is getting tied around a mannequin to make sure it dries and hardens into that right shape. And while I was on the leatherworking train, I had some 2mm leather as well, so a little thinner. So I'm cutting out a bunch of leaves, scraping in some line details, and then sort of pinching them into more of a curved shape to dry out, so hopefully it holds a little bit more dimension. The leaves came up really beautifully, like they're holding their shape really nicely. I didn't do anything to like finish or burnish the edges, so they are very literally looking rough around the edges. This time round, I went a little more experimental with the leather dye, dappling on some brown around the edges and then filling in the center with some green. And while we're on the topic of making accessories that I don't yet even have a plan for, I coated a bunch of wooden rings in that leather dye. I used these rings a lot in my moth witch, so I figured it'd be a nice way to tie the moth witch back to that. When I said I wanted this costume to feel very like lush and damp, for lack of a better word, because I promised I wouldn't use the M word again, I didn't mean like literally, but the amount of paints and dyes and water I've used in this thing, it is definitely a costume that's involved a lot of wet. Also, I'm starting to realize that describing this costume as damp or wet is not much better than moist. Oop, sorry guys. I broke my promise. While the leaves and rings and leather are all drying, I'm gonna start sanding the edge of this brown linen. This piece I've decided is gonna be like a loincloth sort of attachment to that belt. And I'll be honest here folks, most of the rest of this video is just me like putting together bits of fabric and rings and beads just to create like a bazillion different things to hang off various parts of the moth witch. No more thoughts, just gluing things to other things. And also hammering in some rivets to attach the loincloth to the belt. This absolute monstrosity of a scarf is all hand felted wool and it is just absolutely gorgeous. Like, look at those textures. This is not one I made. This was my, I guess, early birthday present to myself. I will put the name of the fantastic fiber artist up on screen here somewhere. But before we do anything more than that, I've got this teal colored cotton scarf. That is going in a pot with some coffee and turmeric because, well, I'm running out of fabric dye. And I want more of a grassy green for this one. It does look like a real nasty soup right now though. The scarf I dyed yesterday has come through. The color difference is pretty subtle, but I kind of expected that. It does smell fantastic though. It's picked up none of the coffee smell and all of the turmeric, so it just smells like really subtly spicy. Oh, that's good. Kind of appropriate considering I always describe colors as delicious anyway. I am allergic to temperature, so the purpose of this is just to provide like a breathable, like warmer weather alternative to this big glorious wool shawl. My crafting for this shawl was just as feral as my skirt, where I'm literally just cutting a hole in a piece and just chucking some ties on to create like a sort of capelet thing. Okay, so I made a couple of minor modifications to this piece here off camera because I don't know, for some reason I was really nervous about making permanent changes to this beautiful handmade piece that someone else has made. But like, I mean, I've paid for it, but still I was nervous about it. Anyway, I've shortened it, so I've cut out a section in the middle and re-sewn it together so that all of these end pieces where most of that fluff is sits higher on the shoulders. And that does mean that I have like a little bit of excess really cool fluffy texture stuff. I also happen to have a green leather pouch that is perfect for this, so it's getting some of that textured trim and these leather leaves. I've still got tons left of this stretchy jersey stuff I used for those gloves, and this stuff is actually great for making little tassels and stuff. Like if I cut myself a little, like some little points into this thing, it kind of stretches out all of these pieces, like they curl up in on themselves. You get like that sort of vine-like texture. Stick some beads and rings on the top of that, maybe some braids, and you've got just like a fantastic little tassel already. Like, I love this stuff. So with all the base elements for the costume done, I just got to work just gluing and tying and sewing a bunch of these elements together in various ways, just to create like a ton of little hanging pieces that have that texture going on. And of course, I did not forget to put a bunch of fake moss over my accessories and add some of that brown into the hat as well. My very last step was adding the last of that netting around the hat as sort of a veil over the eyes, and the last of those dangly elements on either side of my face and into the scarf. Good morning, my loves! It is the photo shoot day. Basically, this is also the reveal for you guys as well as me. I have not tried it all on together. Anyway, I'm heading out to do a photo shoot with Chuang Photography. I've already had my first wardrobe malfunction, which is I cannot, for the life of me, find that brown blouse that I bought for this look. I don't know how I managed to lose that, but it is what it is. Let's just get on with it. Alright, base layers, top, skirt. I've got some good boots. Shout out to Varillas for these babies. And we've got some pants with some thermal leggings underneath because I'm allergic to temperature. I put my frog buddy in a basket because I realized that I don't really have an alternative way for her to be carried around without me just holding in my hands, so yeah. Oh my goodness, you guys! Wait, where's my microphone? Hang on. This is exactly the vision that I had in my head. I don't feel like I can fit in this frame. I'm sorry guys, I do not have enough room in this room. I've still got a while before I have to leave for the shoot, so I'm gonna do a test run outside. The shoot was out in the Dandenong Ranges in the pouring rain. With all my talk of lush and damp, I think I might have accidentally manifested a really rainy day, but at least it kind of worked for the outfit.
You doing okay?
Just getting stuck on everything. I swear by the end of the shoot, this hat was like 3 times heavier from being so soaked in water. Also, reminder to make sure that your fabrics are fully color fast and thoroughly rinsed before you wear them on a rainy day. Well guys, this turned out absolutely awesome. I'm so happy with it. I did of course get very carried away. Like, this was supposed to be a 1-week project. I ended up crafting for 3 weeks because I just couldn't stop adding to it, which is also why the video felt a little bit rushed and I was sort of glossing over some stuff. I mean, I could have turned this into like 2 or 3 videos really, but I regret nothing. Thank you again to CyberGhost VPN for sponsoring this one. Click the link in the description below to get 84% off now, plus 4 months free. It's risk-free with a 45-day money-back guarantee. A huge thank you, as always, to my ultimate supporters. These are my top people on Patreon. Artemis, Earl Monsivial Erno, Michael, Mohican Creates, Residual Images, Robert Mischief, Verilyn, and Yuri. A big thank you also to these other amazing Patreon members who are on screen now. If you'd like to join us over on Patreon, I post previews, work in progress, and entirely exclusive mini projects that you cannot find anywhere else. Like this one on Fizzaroli's hat, or this one upgrading my vampire ball gown, or this one on some creepy neon demons I made. And joining is the best way to support me so I can keep making ridiculous projects like this. But even just by being here, watching my videos, liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, all that good stuff that keep the YouTube robots happy, you are still supporting me and my work. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!